COVID-19 pandemic has challenged many aspects of our economic and social life fundamentally, thereby forcing us to make informed choices about shifting focus towards a better future. In lieu of this, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry brings to you the IMC India Calling Conference 2021 with a sharp focus on smart infrastructure and green technology.
Our gratitude to our supporting partners, the Economic Diplomacy Division of the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Invest India and Maharashtra State Innovation Society. They have supported us for the past several years. Reliance Industries has always encouraged and been sponsoring our event. Big thanks to them. The name itself stands, India Calling. India is indeed calling entrepreneurs, financiers, innovators, technology experts and others to come and take advantage of the transformation which is underway in India. Infrastructure must deliver effective smart mobility solutions while encouraging innovation, facilitating a collaborative ecosystem and meeting sustainability goals. These challenges are part of the rapidly changing landscape of urban mobility. This year's theme of smart infrastructure and green technologies, mobility and sustainability is timely and of much relevance to meet the present day challenges.
It gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all at the IMC India Calling 2021, which is a flagship event of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The event aims at attracting the Indian diaspora and international delegates world over to communicate, cooperate and collaborate with India. Our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has set a target to make this country a $5 trillion economy. There is a need to identify the growth drivers to achieve this target. Hence, we at IMC have chosen smart infrastructure and green technology, which can help the economy to take a quantum leap.
In the last 5-6 months, post-August 2020, I think Indian economy has bounced back, and if you look at all the indicators, if you look at a lot of data, it is becoming clearer that all the three trends have reversed themselves. So the long-term, short-term and the medium-term downturn have all reversed at the same time, and hence the kind of rebound we are experiencing is marvelous.
We in the Ministry of External Affairs have been assisting the IFSC to conclude the requisite agreements with their counterpart institutions around the world, so that there is a framework in place where green bond issuance and green finance can take firm root within our economy.
While the topic is fairly straightforward, it's Invest in India, obviously with a linkage towards smart infrastructure and green technology. I can't resist but start from the macro. We've got people here who are absolutely in tune with the macro, and then we'll come down to the actual topic of the session around smart infra and green energy.
I think this will be a decade when we will see, we have the National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is a commitment of 100 trillion rupees to be spent in infrastructure over the next 5 years. And this includes all kinds of hard infrastructure, but I would say there's also emphasis on soft infrastructure. Just like physical capital, you need human capital, which is investment in skilling, training, education, enhancement of human capital, which translates into a demography which is ready for the employment of a higher quality or higher productivity or higher wage earners. So this will be a decade where we will see a very strong growth phase for India. Driven by infrastructure, driven by demography, driven by savings.
There have been some investors which unfortunately haven't had the best experience in the past. I mean, if you look at the infrastructure investment, I mean, I call it the fourth business cycle that I'm witnessing right now. And between the second and the third, there were a lot of equity investors who actually funded the development of some of the infrastructure projects. Now, I mean, if you speak to them, they have a very different view about India, because they possibly did not realize that the development of infrastructure investment in India could create certain challenges for them, considering that they are only a finite period investors. So again, it depends on who you speak to. But I think they supported that right through. That acknowledgement is there and that drive is there. Now, if I know that I'm seeking capital from somebody who is wanting their investment ESG compliant, I will actually drive that. Whether it is by saying that I need to not use the fossil fuels and I need to use more of the green fuels, if I may, or if it is to say that I need to have a particular social standard in terms of how I look at diversity, for instance. If it is about what is it that I'm giving back to society, and also at something, the governance part is obviously that. If private capital will always chase where it think it can make money. And if you look at the top 5 sectors of private equity, unfortunately, it does not include manufacturing. And I think that's yes, it includes renewables now, because there has been a significant amount of investment which has gone into renewables, and now we can see a wave of consolidation which is happening in that segment. But if you look at manufacturing, that's not being there. And when you speak about some of the new models, when we talk about, for instance, we talk about EV, we talk about batteries and so on and so forth. I think the thing that challenges them at this point in time is that are these businesses scalable at this point in time?
India being the 4th largest emitter, the sheer scale and urgency to make the green transition translates into a whole new business opportunity to invest in India, which will drive a massive investment boom, I feel, and create better quality jobs. The green tech space, with the vast array that comes under it of products and utility, is now going to be another pillar of growth that will drive the economy, I feel.
A city that is good for its citizens is a smart city.
Infrastructure, as we define it, is basically at the public and urban infrastructure stage. But there is also private infrastructure in terms of townships, in terms of buildings, which are consumers of electricity and power and so on. And there is also the associated infra which relates to transport, mobility, so airports, railways, roadways, and so on. So all of that becomes a part of the wider smart infra framework as we define. Even though you say make in India, and we are designing and getting it manufactured in India, if the component itself is not available and it because of import restrictions and so on, then we need to really look at manufacturing down to the component level now, right? So that we have availability of things. I think in a nutshell, I'll say that from our lens at Gaia, we think a lot of design thinking and systems thinking to craft our solutions, and a lot of in-depth technical expertise that we bring in to look at the last mile implementation. And even when we're designing, knowing where the pitfalls are, knowing where the challenges are is critical to design for resilience and to design for impact.
But what I would like to lay more stress on in India is that we have smart cities, we are moving towards that, and it's a need of the hour. And the Honorable Prime Minister has taken huge initiatives and leads in this, right? But what we should be cautious about is the implementation, execution, and once that is done, the question is how do you sustain and improvise? I think we should be very, very cautious on these two aspects. When we look at more of the smart infrastructure, we should have it adaptable to the Indian conditions, considering that the population, the economic income levels of the individuals, how do they sustain the cultural and other aspects. Otherwise, we would be having smart cities, but we will not be able to be just be icons and nothing beyond that.
So if we have these 5 things, livability, employment and ease of working, culture, sports and well-being, and lastly connectivity in any city, then I think that will become smart. Our country is so very diverse that I think to be really smart, we need to be extremely diverse. We need to have different modules. What will work in Mumbai will not work in Navi Mumbai. What will work in Navi Mumbai will not work in Raigad. What will work in Raigad will not work in Aurangabad. And what's working in Aurangabad is not going to work in Burhanpur. What will work in Burhanpur will not work in Bhopal. And vice versa. You can go all over.
I think we can envision where commuters can seamlessly connect with various forms of transportation solutions. Of course, a critical part of smart mobility is to use digital platforms that manage a commuter's journey from beginning to end.
The recovery, as we call it, is strong, and I think we look at recovery more often than not in numbers rather than qualitatively. So just to get that over the hump, qualitatively, beginning last month, we have stopped calling or tracking recovery. We are now tracking year-on-year growth.
Fortunately, we are in a category which has recovered the highest for all the players, which is a two-wheeler ride sharing. One of the major reason is also because of majority of the users are public transportation users who are coming to ride sharing right now, who never used ride sharing in the previous pre-COVID levels, especially because of the affordability nature and also the need for using ride sharing compared to earlier is strong right now because of the safety aspects in the picture. Because we're getting exposed to hundreds of people in a public transportation versus maybe one or two drivers if you're using any of these ride sharing options. So because of that strong nature, the recoveries are becoming stronger for some of these categories. And also important thing is we are getting the first time ride sharing users post-COVID, even without spending a lot of marketing dollars.
One very important aspect of smart mobility is decongesting the cities, because that's a practicality that we are facing. We realize that most of our cities, in fact, all our cities have grown from small townships to larger townships to small cities and finally tier 2 cities. Probably Chandigarh is the only planned city in India. So we have this as a fact on the ground, and we have huge issues of congestion. And they actually carried out a study a few years back where they said that this congestion portion is actually is a big problem, and then they decided on how to deal with this congestion in the cities. We have to decongest the cities, that's a real problem. We have to decongest the cities, and we have to have really smart mobility, which actually caters to the smooth movement of the people.
Yeah, I think, it's obvious that whatever you call it, CASE or clean, connected, convenient, autonomous, and powered by renewable energy, that's going to be the way of the future. We have to optimize all of this to part of it. And electrification and connectivity become important pieces, irrespective of what form of transportation you're looking at, right? So I think we shouldn't just say A or B is going to work. I think the world has to have multiple forms of transportation. We need to be more interconnected. We need to be electric. And we need to have an infrastructure that's highly scalable that can enable a large transformation, 30 to 50% in the next 5 years.
We aim to increase spending on climate solutions and to amplify the climate ecosystem by building the capacity of solution providers. Today, India is one of the youngest nations in the world, with more than 62% of its population in the working group from ages 15 to 59, and more than 54% of its total population below 25 years of age. It's estimated that the average age of the population in India by 2020 is 29 years, as against 40 years in the USA, 46 years in Europe, and 47 years in Japan. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of these have really skyrocketed in the last few decades. And we've been able to create platforms and opportunities for the youth to build the future that India deserves. Although leveraging technology in emerging markets like India is often nuanced and quite complex, it is also important to recognize that the technological trends that break through this multifaceted landscape have enormous impact.
The reason I chose to be a part of the Innovation Society and why I continue working towards this mission of empowering startups across the state is that I firmly believe that startups have a very, very important role to play in how the Indian economy pans out over the next few years. 2020, despite being such a bad year because of COVID and all the other issues we faced, still somehow India managed to produce 11 unicorns this year. For those not too familiar with the startup ecosystem, unicorns are firms which have generated a valuation of more than $1 billion. About each early stage startup in India creates an average of about 12 jobs. Like Shloka mentioned, in the age of AI, ML, blockchain, and a lot of other things which mankind is not too familiar with, this does pose a solid challenge with respect to the job market which lies ahead of us. However, historically, whenever there's automation which has happened, wherever mechanical jobs have been replaced with machines of any kind, there's also a significant number of other kind of jobs which have been created. So one school of thought, of course, says that for every mechanical job which is lost to a machinery today, there will be a significant number of other jobs created as well.
What I have learned is working with the youths globally is that when this COVID happened, they were the ones who were actually in the forefront of doing multiple things. So they were very actively involved. But they are the ones who are very much affected by it as well. So what I would urge is, for the government and the businesses is to, give more attention and the flow of investments in digital learning, so the skills, those kind of skills can be given to the young people.
The common conceit in the United States at the university level amongst venture capitalists like Peter Thiel is that there are two different worlds. There's the developing world and the developed world. And I would posit that this is actually not a very correct or helpful characterization of India's place in the world to come. Because the implicit assumption you're making when you describe a place like India as developing is that what India should do with the capital available to it in both the venture markets, in R&D in general, is to take the best ideas from the West and implement them so that you can reach the frontier. In other words, it shouldn't be that your goal to try and catch up, it should be to jump ahead.
So design is beginning to match up with technology. Technology can deliver production close by, 3D printing, automation, urban farming. And then that changes how you lay out your city and how you design your city. And the goal is a better quality of life for people, not necessarily more income, but a life that feels fulfilled and complete. In India, because it is the growth democracy, is right at the point where we all hope, we in the United States, hope that we can team with India as the two leading democracies in the world. And we'll join Europe into that because Europe's become very democratic. And those countries, we demonstrate what it means to be a democracy, what it means to have moral fiber, what it means to have leadership.
We're actually the embodiment of an effective global international organization, and we are that because we are an institution. We are purpose-led. We're not member-driven. We are purpose-led. Our purpose is pretty bold, but it's to enable business worldwide to secure peace, prosperity, and opportunity for all. And we deliver that by what we do is make business work for everyone, every day, everywhere. And when we think about what we do, we work to grow the global economy, revitalize global trade, and ensure we do so sustainably. These are the three key things that we do.
For me, before the technology is the design. Because let's think about about the 15-minute city. Bilbao is a good example because of the morphology of the city, what we call the proximity city or the proximity city. So you can reach everything by walking. So it's the best way of mobility. No?
Our mission is a good start for all children. And we believe that giving all children a good start in life is not only the right thing to do, but also the best way to build a happy, healthy, and prosperous society. There is a lot of evidence that suggests that investments made during the first 1,000 days are critical and foundational for the holistic well-being of children. The brain, as many of us know, develops at its most rapid pace during the first 1,000 days. There is research, for instance, by the Nobel laureate James Chmn that shows that every dollar spent in cost-benefit terms on early childhood program yields a return of $7 to $10 in the long term. And therefore, Urban 95 is our strategy at the Bernard Van Leer Foundation to work with cities
to incorporate an early childhood lens into the planning and management of cities. And if we were to understand Urban 95 from the perspective of young children, we would invite you to sit down on your knees and think about the question. If you could experience the city from a perspective of 95 centimeters, which is the average height of a healthy 3-year-old child by WHO standards, what would you do differently?
India is calling, ladies and gentlemen, and it's calling the world as the world's fastest growing economy. India definitely is good news. In this fireside discussion, ladies and gentlemen, we look into more details. What does it really mean in terms of sustainable growth, focusing on smart infrastructure in green technology?
If you look back pre-COVID, the world had a different geopolitical framework, world had a different economic ranking, and based on that, there were a lot of assumptions that were made while going into COVID. I recall during March of 2020, that is exactly 1 year back, there were experts of Indian origin who were working in America or in Europe, came to India and said that we will have 300 million infections by July 2020, and almost 100 million people will be dead by July 2020. And nothing of that sort happened. In fact, during the process, India ended up providing a lot of medicines to the rest of the world. India also managed itself much better than what it was expected to. And today, India is not even in top 100 countries in terms of the number of infections per million. The newer wealth that would be created is basically going to be what I call dematerialized wealth. Wealth which is not visible. And that's where Indian young population with all technology savvy is going to play a major role in creating the new world order, in new world wealth. The Indian economy came out much better than what we had expected, and actually the financial sector has come out more intact than most people thought. Even banking system is doing better than what we had expected. So overall, India is doing reasonably well.
If you see the transition of India in recent times, we are removing some of the constraints which had curtailed us. We were always high inflationary economy. Now Reserve Bank of India has been mandated inflation targeting, and we are becoming, or we are moving towards low inflationary economy. We were always high fiscal deficit economy, and today, despite COVID-19, relative to the rest of the world, we are fiscally prudent. We always gave commanding heights to public sector undertakings. Now we are giving commanding heights to private entrepreneurs. And this transition of baton from public sector to private sector will be really game changer for India. India is transforming for better with low inflation, fiscally prudent, more space to private entrepreneurs, physical as well as digital economy, and infrastructure surplus economy. Put all these things together, I will be more bullish about growth of India over the next 10 years than let's say previous 10 years.
We are grateful to guest of honor, Shri P. Harish, Additional Secretary, Economic Relations and Head of Economic Diplomacy and States Division, Ministry of External Affairs. Mr. Rashesh Shah, Chairman, Edelweiss Group, for sparing their valuable time and sharing their perspectives. This India Calling Conference was sponsored by Reliance Industries Limited. IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry is very grateful for their continuing support. Thank you ET Now for being broadcast partners for the conference. Please look for post-conference episodes on ET Now. Our grateful thanks are also to Economic Diplomacy Division, Ministry of External Affairs, Invest India, and Maharashtra State Innovation Society for their support to the conference.
And with that, it's a wrap on the IMC Calling Conference 2021. Stay tuned for more only on ET Now.